Greetings. Happy Friday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. I'm Steve Deace, and I didn't take any money from India today. Because nothing says America first quite like funded by foreign money. He is Todd Erzin. Todd, how much money did you take from India today?
My coattails are confident that the answer is 0.
Yes? No? Okay. Aaron McIntyre?
0. I'd like to be tempted with that cold, hard Indian money, but 0 today.
There you go. We'll be joined by our White House correspondent, Chris Bedford. He's in D.C. I'm afraid to ask him if he took any
flush
India money.
with India money over there.
He's in D.C. Everybody's taking everything. All right. He'll be joining us here in a moment for the Deace Group. Poor Chris. Like, the last minute I was reconsidering this.
I'll send them my routing number.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, you can tell he's in the swamp. He's like, oh, no, they handing out money? Hey, I mean, all right. Hey.
I don't know how to grow it yet, so I have to make it.
There you go. There you go. Apparently, if you claim you're a MAGA influencer online and take money from Russia or from Coca-Cola or India, you too, I guess, can engagement farm with the best of them. That's what we're learning. It's a great gig out there. Also a great gig, our friends over at Patriot Mobile. There's a lot of places where you guys could go in order to get your mobile phone service. And there's even growing people in the space, in the red parallel economy space in this industry as well. But there was one OG from the beginning that pushed back on the communist countries that offers you some of the exact same coverage and benefits that you get from the companies that hate you, like 3 different networks within their main hub that you can switch to anytime you want for free, if you remember. You get all kinds of other things that are roaming, mobile hotspots, internet backup, unlimited data, and more. All of this with our friends over at Patriot Mobile. And though you can be assured they're going to reinvest what you invested them back into the values that they share with you. And I've seen it with my own eyes. Traveling around the country, I see Patriot Mobile present everywhere, supporting the same things that you guys want supported, which is why you want to support them. But most of all, you want to do it because it's one heck of a product. That's why our family uses Patriot Mobile as well. Use the promo code Steve to get started for a free month of service when you go to patriotmobile.com/Steve. That's patriotmobile.com/Steve. Use the promo code Steve to get started with a free month of service if you switch today at patriotmobile.com/Steve. And also, don't forget, October 11th in Dallas, Ali Stuckey's new event, Share the Arrows, coming up. If you want to be a part of an outstanding lineup of ladies that are there to encourage you in both spirit and in truth. And fellas, if you're looking for a good getaway for your wife, for your daughter, for your sister, you could do a lot better than this, or a lot worse than this, I should say. Can't do any better than this. Get your tickets now at sharethearrows.com. VIP options still exist. Sharethearrows.com. Sharethearrows.com is where you can go. All right, coming up next hour, it'll be Feedback Friday, but let's kick this thing off on a Friday as we always do with the Deace Group. Your weekly look at the week that was begins, as it always does, with Bleep, Lord Nefarious Says.
Took back what he stole from us. Took it back, took back
our dignity.
Took it back.
Took back our humanity.
Well, we
went down to the rich man's house and we took back what he stole from us.
You're going to hear people, especially this past weekend, 54 shot, 7 dead.
Look, big cities have crime. There's no doubt about it. But let's just pay attention to what President Trump is doing.
Shootings will continue.
You get up in the morning and you doom scroll through things, and although I will say this, the last few days you woke up thinking there might be news. Just saying. There will be news sometime, just so you know, there will be news.
Look at this room's
I believe that in Wisconsin, our ability to keep our undocumented people working like they are now at a really high numbers in the state of Wisconsin, if he takes that to a improper end, our economy will be gone.
Are you prepared to defend this land that was built by slaves, a land that was built by indigenous people, a land that is built by workers? Are you prepared to defend this land? The people united will always prevail. I need you all to stand firm, to stand strong if this president decides to continue.
Free bus.
And who runs that?
The city of New York runs it, just like we run so many other services. And the bottom line here is to think about the free buses again. Free buses has been proven to work in many parts of the country.
Where?
I'll get you a list of cities.
The notion that rights don't come from laws and don't come from the government, but come from the creator, that's what the Iranian government believes. It's a theocratic regime that bases its rule on Shia law and targets Sunnis, Baha'is, Jews, Christians, and other religious minorities. And they do it because they believe that they understand what natural rights are from their creator. So the statement that our rights do not come from our laws or our governments is extremely troubling.
All right, Chris, as the guest, you get the first crack at it. What was the worst of what you just witnessed and why?
Oh, I love that opening video because I like it when people sing in public. I was really enjoying you humming along to the theme music on the way over here. I thought it was excellently done. The civil rights cosplaying in favor of criminality is just such a fun thing. And, you know, it kind of plays off where you saw the governor of Illinois over there talking about, well, big cities have crime. Well, yeah, they do. We've all lived in big cities, or a lot of us have had the misfortune of lived in big cities. I lived in Washington, D.C. I came here 21 years ago when it was pretty tough in some areas, where now it's difficult to get a restaurant reservation. Places where President Barack Obama took his wife and kids were nothing but AIDS clinics and punk rock shows and empty lots just when I first moved here. But then we know that these cities committed suicide. Like, it was intentional. These city councils and some of these mayors and some of these politicians came out and said, well, what if we came up with different ways to punish crime other than punishment? What if we talked about therapy? What if we talked about this or that? And the solution to crime is, and always has been, punishment. And a good way to stop crime before it happens is deterrence, not really much of anything else. And we're seeing the impact right here. And going out there and singing those songs in a city that is so much nicer right now than it was 3 weeks ago, I don't know how much convincing that's actually doing. But keep it up. And they need to practice. They need to get to your level. That generation just, and every generation has, it's like halcyon moment, and it kind of can't move on from that. Okay. But that particular generation, I mean, you know, and Francis, what's his nuts? Francis Collins was doing this as well. Everything's, you know, Pete Singer, Joan Baez, Simon and Garfunkel. Okay. Everything is the 60s over and over and over again. Every scandal's got to have gate after it. All right. I don't know about everybody else here. There's no boomers on this. Can we just be done with the boomer trope? It's just a general rule. Can we at least come up with new names, new shticks, new titles? And they'll probably even be worse, because one thing boomers do really well is make music. They'll probably be worse, but at least they'll be different, right? I mean, everything is seen through the filter of where you were at Woodstock in the summer of '69. Were you part of the Summer of Love in '67 on the corner of Haight and Ashbury in Berkeley? Everything has to go back to that. Did you read your Woodward and Bernstein in the summer of '72 and '73? We just have to keep going back to these tropes over and over and over and over again, to the point I can't tell when these people are morally outraged or they just want a class reunion. Okay? Todd.
Yeah. Well, remember what my boomer deacon friend said. He said this stuff.
My generation has to die in the church. That's what he told you, right?
40 years in the desert. Yeah, that's exactly how it is. Well, listen, I will just say this. The premise for everything we do with this segment and what the worst is, the standard is now set by Tim Kaine.
Thank you.
That is the all-timer.
Yes.
It is the guts of everything we comment on and every other one. The reason it's gotten that bad is because of nonsense that Tim Kaine just said. The upside down of God. So That's the reference point. I just need to say that. With that in mind, because, wow, the governor of my home state, who I believe is like an academic economist of some stripe.
So a total
Wisconsin,
moron,
yes.
essentially. Yes. Okay.
When he's, I'm just talking logical principles here. If he's saying that our economy won't work unless we have undocumented immigrants, might I suggest that that's economy that's not worth having?
Correct.
Yep.
Who cares if that math adds up? It's evil.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Who cares if the spreadsheet gets tweaked enough?
Listen. There are spreadsheets in Medellin that add up.
Yes.
There are spreadsheets with human traffickers, and the numbers add up, and it's a profitable venture.
You're all
right?
feeling me.
But just because the math adds up does not mean it's math we should be doing. That's evil math, and if that's the math required in your economy, it's not, as you said brilliantly, it's not an economy worth having.
Remember, I've said before, the Greek root of economia is household. It's supposed to work for the households that Steve has been talking about, how they got to start feeling this economy turn around. And when your priority is undocumented interest, you're saying that that's impossible.
Can I just add on the Tim Kaine thing? Because
you must.
This can't be understated. Essentially, Tim Kaine, there's a big debate happening right now on the right. What's an American, and are we a country of native heritage and tradition? Are we a propositional nation? Blah, 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 blah. Okay. What Tim Kaine is telling you is he is not an American. I can't make it any more succinct than that. And that guy was less than 77,000 votes nationwide in 4 states away from being the vice president of the United States. And he's just telling you, I'm not an American. He took the founding creed of the country, that our rights come from God. It is the fundamental premise of the founding document of the nation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created with unalienable rights by their creator, among them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, laws of nature and nature's God, yada, yada, yada. He basically said, I don't believe that. And he didn't just say that. He blasphemed it and drew a moral equivalency with what Sharia law and Islam claims.
That's exactly what he did.
He didn't just say, I don't believe it. He desecrated it. He blasphemed it. He's not an American. I don't care where he was born. I don't care what his family tree says or his genealogy says. He's excommunicated himself. He's not an American. That's what he's telling you.
Which means open war is upon you, whether
Correct.
you wish it or not.
And I know I say this a lot. I'm going to have to unfortunately say it a lot more. You cannot share a country with that. It will not share a country with you. So if you still don't want to get that, you still think, well, that's just too radical, that's not true, I promise you, it's going to continue to show you it has no intent to share it with you. He is already acting. What he's basically, out of the heart, the mouth speaks. What he is showing you is the core premise of the worldview that dictates all the things about him that people like us have opposed all these years. That's really his soul. He just bared his soul to you. I am a statist. Oh, you disagree? Take it from here. Go ahead.
I'm going to be too smart by half here. I don't think Tim Kaine really believes that, what he just said. I think in his head he does, in his soul he doesn't. Why, if you really believed that, why would you say that out loud when your frickin' party's in the minority in all 3 branches of government, numbnuts? Why would you give anybody opposed to you an idea? Oh,
great point. Listen, they were the party of Trump's first term of Trump is Hitler, give him all the guns. They were the party of that simultaneous messaging in his first term, remember? But go ahead, yes.
That's all. So finish your point.
No, but he's not alone. He just said it out loud. And they're going to say these things out loud more often. This is what they've always believed. For a generation, they've believed this. And because it's what you have to believe in order to commit to the behaviors and policies and messaging that they do. It's just stunning to hear somebody just say it right out loud.
Isn't that awesome?
Yes.
I love it. I mean,
Go ahead,
It's
Chris.
so much more refreshing than President Barack Obama just cribbing on Ronald Reagan while doing incredibly radical things, but sounding like a calming and adult responsible force in his speeches. It has changed so much. I credit AOC with really bringing in a lot of this change. Back when her chief of staff, her first one was out there saying, yeah, the Green New Deal is really actually about economic overhaul. It's not about the environment.
Right.
Yeah, I know. We've been saying that forever. And thank you for saying it. Thank you for openly rejecting God in a way that liberals didn't do when I was growing up. I thought that I was a liberal because I didn't really like George W. Bush or the Iraq War. And I got to college and I heard what they thought, which is open scorn for the family, open hatred of God, mocking of God in science classes, mocking of conservatives, dislike of white people, all this sort of stuff. And I thought, well, maybe I should do some more reading because that doesn't sound like something that I believe in. And that kind of openness that you saw in the university is everywhere now. They put it on TikTok. They put it out as campaign commercials. And I embrace it. Let the American people have a choice.
I agree, provided we are willing to embrace it on our side and actually give them that choice.
Yeah, I agree.
If we are willing to take their bluntness then and be blunt in return, I agree. It is a tremendous opportunity. Aaron, I'm sorry. You go ahead.
Well, we've got to get on to the next story, but I was just going to make that little comment and go right where Todd went, and kind of for the same reasons. It's the exact same thing we were talking about. Was it Peter Navarro a couple of weeks ago talking about how if we don't import 600,000 Chinese students, the bottom 15% of the universities would go bankrupt? Might I suggest if the bottom 15%...
It was Lutnick. Navarro was like,
Lutnick.
never say that.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Lutnick was saying that, sorry. The bottom 15% of universities, if your very existence is incumbent upon the importation of 600,000 communist spies, you might have some other more foundational issues. It's the same thing Tony, the Wisconsin governor was talking about. It's the exact same thing. Your economy sucks if it is incumbent upon the importation of chattel labor. It's not really an economy.
I'm very glad you reset that because it goes to what I just said to Chris. If our response I agree with Chris, but if our response is we have to import 600,000 Chinese communists to save the colleges that are trying to turn Americans into communists, we're doomed. We'll gain nothing out of them exposing who they really are if those are our responses to them doing so. And our responses need to be, thank you. And that's exactly why we're not going to import any more communists into the country. We already have enough. All right. We don't need any from Asia. We've got plenty of whites from Virginia that are communists just as we are. So thank you very much. And we're going to stop doing that. Exit question. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being the odds, our beloved colleague and sister Jill Savage has to worry about being sexually harassed by Lindsey Graham. And 10 being the odds our dapper colleague Chris here most definitely does. Watch your 6, Chris. Watch your 6. Rank this week's. Go ahead, Chris.
I don't think I'm quite his taste, at least not based on some of the young men I've seen helping him around D.C. with his luggage and driving his vehicles. And he puts those bodybuilders around.
Okay, yeah, that might have done it. He came off the top rope on me on this, and that might have hit my yuck factor. That might have done it.
You deserved it.
That might have done it. Anyway, this week's level of total depravity. I'm at a 19 after what Chris just said. Go ahead, Todd.
High. 10.
It's very high. Chris, where are you at?
Oh, I'm giving that a 0. I think she's safe. And she was actually kind of, for completely different reasons, even safe all week at NatCon, which was shocking. People would run past her and her other reporters to go talk to Matt Peterson and Ryan Williams and all the other different people and just nerd out over that. And I thought, this is a strange, strange crowd we're in.
Jeez. Aaron, do you want to just follow that? We just want to move on. You good?
Yeah, taking the black pill.
All right,
taking the black pill.
Yeah, smart play. All right, issue 2. Speaking of black pills, Battleground CDC.
There's some ongoing good turmoil at HHS, particularly CDC, where Director Susan Minares is out. Also out is Dr. M-Pox Leather Daddy, a.k.a. Dimitri Daskalakis. President Trump this week attributed the turmoil to disagreement at the highest levels about things like the COVID jab, and Trump himself indicated his position on Operation Warp Speed might be slipping. Amidst this flurry of developments, HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. testified in front of the Senate Finance Committee yesterday. and he came to drop bombs.
We were lied to about everything. We were lied to about natural immunity. We were lied to about, we were told again and again the vaccines would prevent transmission, they prevent infection. It wasn't true. We were told that there was science behind cloth masks. The CDC allowed the teachers union to write the order closing our schools, which hurt working people all over the country. And you've sat in that chair for how long? 20, 25 years, while the chronic disease in our children went up to 76%. And you said nothing. You never asked the question why it's happening. Why is this happening? When my uncle was president, we spent zero on chronic disease. Today, we spend $1.3 trillion. If we don't end this chronic disease, we are the sickest country in the world. That's why we have to fire people at CDC. I never promised that I was going to recommend products with which there is no indication.
When you said...
And I know you've taken $855,000 from pharmaceutical companies, Senator.
Those parameters, you did it behind closed doors.
No, the data is all public.
Now parents who decide that they do want their children to have
You're just making stuff up, Senator.
I'm not
You're just making stuff up. 2002, CDC did an internal study of Atlanta and Fulton County, Georgia children, and looked at children who got the MMR vaccine on time and compared those to kids who got them later. Black boys who got the vaccine on time had a 260% greater chance of getting an autism diagnosis than children who waited. The chief scientist on that, Dr. William Thompson, the senior vaccine safety scientist at CDC, was ordered to come into a room with 4 other co-authors by his boss, Frank DiStefano, who's the head of the immunization safety branch, and ordered to destroy that data. We are being lied to by these agencies, and we're going to change that right now.
All right. First question to you, Todd. The state of play with MAHA after what we saw yesterday from RFK Jr.
Well, as the anti-vaxxer pre-COVID, I have a different perspective than a lot of you. You have to, what's happening right now is beyond our wildest dreams. We are pushing a openness to a reality of a situation that, quite frankly, many thought we never have the opportunity to do. So that's absolutely winning. But I want you to temper this by the fact that there was a video going around. A lot of people are talking about it. Trump yesterday meeting with Gates, Zuckerberg, etc. There's the health aspect of things in that conversation, and there's the economic leviathan that is healthcare, that is pharma, and Trump's personal sense that I made something happen with Operation Warp Speed, okay? That couldn't, and he will never set that down, regardless of whether I'd come poison people. He's saying you couldn't have gotten from A to B, no matter what the result is, without me. And I think he kind of is high on that feeling again. And my prediction is going to involve this. But there is the simple truth of the matter is that the dollars and cents of healthcare in this country are so large that this MAHA win, while a big deal, we're never going to go back to being a granola country. That might be better for us all spiritually, mind, body, and soul, but that's not going to happen. And if we're going to be serious about talking about economic realities, this is a piece of it. And that seat at the table you saw, that's not a coincidence that what RFK Jr. is doing and that he had that meeting with them and the economic numbers are coming out at the same time. So I'm just, be excited, but don't get drunk on this, because RFK Jr. is doing a lot, but he can only do so much.
Chris, what do you think?
He can only do so much, but I think one of the reasons, and I'm writing about this right now for the Beltway brief, one of the reasons that they were so heap big mad at him, both parties, is that unlike border enforcement or unlike internal immigration enforcement or unlike trade policies, what he's doing can't so easily be undone. you were a rare person to be vaccine skeptical before COVID. You heard about it. You saw Jim Carrey talked about it. Homeschool people I knew were kind of skeptical of the whole thing. But when my stepson was born 9 years ago, my wife didn't even question, oh, yeah, the doctors, they came into the hospital room and they have a hepatitis B shot. It's really important, apparently. It's necessary that he takes this for his safety. Sure. Well, I trust you. You're a doctor. You're here to help. And that's completely different from when my daughter was born just last year, where she said, absolutely not. You won't be doing that. And we've got a book and we're reading about this. And and there's no chance of him. You already tested me. That's completely ridiculous. This is part of a social experiment, not part of science. And it's going down the line. Now, she pays attention to this all the time, but you see it all over Instagram. You see it all over TikTok. You see it in popular culture. You see it in products that are popping up the same way that Budweiser started buying microbreweries back in the day. Now you're going to have some of these big corporations trying to make products without plastic.
Or green energy, same thing, was originally kind of a lefty, alternative economy, and that got corporatized at the same time.
You guys are getting it. Yeah.
Exactly. And that can't be put away. They can undo some of the changes. They can put back recommendations. But parents thinking for themselves and thinking about it, and that trust that was broken by COVID and is now be given voice by RFK, that's going to be a lot harder to undo.
That's brilliantly said. Aaron.
Yeah, I pray that they're going to be able to, MAHA will be able to weather this storm, because earlier this year it was MAHA, threat from within. Now I think you're seeing, and that started the other day, threats from without. I mean, you just look at those geriatric senators, and our colleague Sarah Gonzalez, I'm just going to totally rip this off from her. She said, and this is absolutely true, I retweeted it or reposted it. She said yesterday, just remember, all of those people shrieking at RFK Jr., never trust them again about anything. Never, ever. But I just got to tell you, one of those people is Bill Cassidy from Louisiana. The middle name of most people in Washington, D.C. is cynical. Okay? The middle name of most people in Congress, I should say, is cynical. That's their middle name. That's the air that they breathe. I don't know if I've ever seen something go from cynical to just flat out nihilist than what Bill Cassidy did to RFK, or tried to do to RFK Jr. yesterday. Pitting him against President Trump on the issue of Operation Warp Speed, playing to Trump's pride in Operation Warp Speed against RFK Jr.'s skepticism. That, to me, he's a Republican senator doing this to the Republican president and the Republican president's pick to lead HHS. That goes beyond cynical. That's just straight up nihilism.
Also shows you
he's not the senator from Louisiana. He's the senator from Big Pharma.
That's exactly right.
After his name. That is a level of, it goes beyond cynicism to nihilism that just has to be defeated. I hope there's, I already know what the answer is before it leaves my mouth. I hope there's a primary campaign against Bill Cassidy, but we all know that's probably not going to happen.
That also tells you he has no data. That's what that tells you. That was the only case he had to make, was to try and pit RFK Jr. against Trump's ego. He has no data. That's what that really tells you.
Oh, it could be worse. He actually has the data, and it actually speaks to what we talk about, and he doesn't care, which has happened all the time.
I totally believe that.
That is very true.
Totally believe that.
I hope it's clear at the beginning that the team wasn't in place, and he was tempering himself from a pacing standpoint. I hope after yesterday that RFK Jr. realizes the only answer after what occurred yesterday in the Senate is absolutely. I love the smell of napalm in the morning. Smells like victory. That's the only answer from this point forward. No restraint whatsoever. None. Absolutely none. All right, exit question. They still got to come up with another CDC director. You think Joe Ladapo in Florida could get confirmed as director of the CDC?
Nope.
Aaron is a no. Todd?
Yes.
You think he could?
He's black. Hey.
I love Aaron's complaining about cynicism and nihilism, and then Todd just goes there with his answer. That's beautiful.
And he'll be able, and you know what? He's booked for the end of the month, so you can ask him yourself.
What do you think, Chris? You're there. You're in the swamp. Do you think that could happen or not?
That carries a lot of credit in Republican senatorial circles for sure. And especially now when they're actually, he would never have been able to get the 60 votes to be able to break this sort of stuff. But now they're talking about going nuclear option and trying to get rid of this logjam. And the White House is in conversations and the Senate's in agreement. Other Republicans in the Senate are in agreement. Well, that makes these sorts of things a lot easier. And, exactly.
Go ahead.
They like to kind of diversify their crowds.
I had actually not even thought of that angle. Props to you for the cynicism. It's respect. It's also probably correct. At least I hope it is in this case. More in a moment. All right, back here on the Steve Deace Show. You want to talk about some unprecedented times. In these unprecedented times,
Bing, bing, bing.
There's a for sale sign in the yard in a house across the street from me. All right. So that's the second one in the last 2 years, one a year in my neighborhood, where in 2019 and going back to when we moved into that neighborhood in 2006, if your house was for sale for 30 days in that neighborhood, people thought had to have black mold or something. Okay. It was hard to get a home. All right. So we're trying to get the real estate market going again. There are some signs of life. I was talking to my real estate agent that I trust, my guy, Scott Remsburg, who got this space for us, in fact. And he was telling me business was booming, actually, for him around the state of Iowa in July and August. So maybe those are some signs of life. Here's what I can tell you, though. Whenever this gets booming again, whether it's now or in the near future, a lot's changed since the last time it was booming in the third and fourth quarter of 2019. A lot's changed, which is why more than ever before, it's important for you to have a real estate agent you can trust. Where would you find them to help you navigate all those changes? Realestateagentsitrust.com. The name says it all. That's where you want to go. We're going to hook you up there with an agent, whether it's across town or across the country, wherever you want to get to, whose track record of success we have verified for you. Otherwise, we wouldn't recommend them to you. All right. So again, make sure you find an agent that can help you navigate, which even in the best of times can be a stressful process, the kind of agent that you'll be recommending to friends and family years later at realestateagentsitrust.com. That's realestateagentsitrust.com. All right, let's welcome back in our White House correspondent there, Chris Bedford from D.C. here on the Deace Group. And let's get to issue 3 of your weekly look at the week that was. Can the UK be saved?
Things across the pond are bad, really bad. From ongoing reports of rape gangs roving the once pristine and serene northern England to King Charles singing the praises of Islam to in recent times getting in trouble for flying the actual English flag to the newest example of rising totalitarianism. This week, Irish comedy writer Graham Linehan issued the following ex-post, quote, "If a trans-identified male is in a female-only space, he is committing a violent, abusive act. Make a scene, call the cops, and if all else fails, punch him in the balls," end quote. In a different era and not that long ago, a post like that would have been common sense, just and right. But in this era, it got Linehan arrested. Apparently, as he was stepping off a flight into London's Heathrow Airport, he was met by 5 armed members of law enforcement who arrested him and wouldn't tell him why. It was later revealed to be that aforementioned ex-post that contained wrongthink and incitement or something. Linehan showed up to his initial court hearing wearing a large placard around his neck reading, "There is no such thing as transgender children." Maybe if there were a little bit more of that spirit in the UK, they wouldn't be worried about getting arrested for wrongthink. It's clear that spirit still exists in pockets, but for the UK, we're wondering if it's too little, too late.
All right, so let's start with that question, Aaron. We'll start this one with you. Can the UK be saved?
Yeah, it can. Just not through peaceable methods, unfortunately. We had a buy, sell, hold submission this week asking, do you think the UK could swing further right than we think the United States is swinging? And I think absolutely yes. Yeah, that is a possibility. Do you understand what the consequences of that is, though? The consequences of that is hot, kinetic. Okay, we've had examples of this on the British Isles just within the last century, that these types of things can and will happen. Eventually, and it's a pressure cooker. They're an island there. It's a very small spit of land. Eventually, when you deny agency and spit in the face of the people who have generations of family who lived in these lands, and you just spit in their face and tell them they have no agency. And if you tell women that you can defend yourself from blinked in the head trannies, and you're going to get arrested for that, eventually that is going to go hot. Now, how soon, I don't know. But it's human nature. Regardless of whether or not the motivations from the right are just and whether or not their actions are moral, you just, in a pressure cooker island situation like that, or in any country or society like that, eventually it's going to go hot. So it can be saved, yes. But the path to getting there is not going to look like the Shire, because right now the UK looks more like Mordor than the Shire.
To follow up on what you just said, my son and I, there's a few of these accounts on YouTube, people who do like breakdowns of, trailers and stuff of genre films and, Easter eggs of movies and stuff that you may have missed. And Noah and I, since he's a little kid, have always liked watching these, And one of these guys is based out of the UK, and he is absolutely hilarious. Now, why am I bringing this up? Because he'll also post his broader thoughts on what's happening culturally in the UK on his account at the same time. And I saw him post this morning, and I quote, "We tried a right-wing government, and it was bleep. We have a left-wing government, and it is bleep. Maybe our entire government is just bleep." Okay? You guys can fill in your word for poop there in the bleep, right? All right. Now, why do I bring this up? I would argue, when did they try a right-wing government? Was it the Honorable Rishi Sunak? Was it the Honorable Elizabeth Truss? Was it the Honorable Boris Johnson? The Honorable Theresa May? Who were any of these? These aren't right-wingers. These are people who make... I might grant you they're not avowed communists.
They'll wish you a happy Easter.
Correct. But I mean, these aren't... I'm not even sure these are, Mitt Romneys. Or maybe that's what they are at best. But this is what you're speaking to with the lack of agency. The energy level on the ground there, where would it go? Where would you suggest these people vote, for example? Where would you suggest they go? There's not really an answer. I mean, they could try they could try another round of lesser of two evils. That was Theresa May, Boris Johnson, Elizabeth Truss, Rishi Sunak. They've done this all before. And so now it's at a point of no return, Chris, and that energy has to go somewhere. And if you have all that energy and people think there's a lack of an agency, now, all of us to some degree, I would imagine here, are students of history. Chris, can you ever think of a time that when any kind of oligarchy or duopoly or feudalistic system or mercantilistic system or monarchy, whatever the era was of consolidated political power, that it just decided on its own voluntarily to grant agency to the people it had been denying it to? Can you think of a time they just did that peaceably out of their own accord? Can you think of a time? Because I can't. 7,000 years of human history, I can't come up with a single one, Chris. Maybe you can.
No, I can't. And this is what we're seeing in the streets right now in England. We've seen it before, and we've seen it more mass movement after Enoch Powell spoke the truth about the immigration system and where it was going to lead England. This was 50 years ago. He was drummed out of public life, and his ghost, his specter, hung over every ounce of politics in the United Kingdom for decades afterwards. The Beatles recorded songs about it. When the BBC, after the double-decker bus bombings in London, released a retrospective documentary looking at the speech and asking if the guy had a point about the multicultural clashes that were coming into England and the completely unelected people who were making decisions on the nature of the British people, the BBC ended up having to take that documentary down, and it was never released. You have to find it in the dark corners of the web to be able to watch it. I recommend it because it did a good job. What's sad about England and sad about Scotland, where I still have a lot of family, and what's sad about a lot of countries east of the United States in the Old West, is that they don't have the same spirit that we have. If you drive through the American countryside, even during COVID, you're going to find legit cowboys. You're going to see big American flags. You're going to see people who maybe don't quite realize what a precarious situation we're in, but they love their God. They love their country. They're well armed. They care about the land. They care about their neighborhoods and their communities. And they have a huge amount of patriotic spirit and fervor and energy. They just didn't realize what was going on in D.C. or it didn't really impact them. So they thought everything was all right. You don't find that at the same levels in a lot of other countries. The countrysides are depressed, extremely poor. What you see in some of the more wretched parts of the United States, you still see in large parts of England. The working class there has been gutted and defeated. I mean, at the end, it's kind of ugly, but if you go to those towns that Margaret Thatcher confronted the coal miners in, there's nothing. Nobody was taught to code. No one came in to help them. The free market didn't swoop in. It's just drug addicts and tenements and housing projects. And you see that a lot of places throughout the UK. And it's sad that the energy that you see bubbling up and you see so many people enraged, I don't really know if it knows how to be directed. You have an entire elite class that went to the exact same schools, were in the exact same clubs, have the exact same ideas, and they're all against you, basically, except for Nigel Farage, who they all hate.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a rising tide of resentments as people are starting to realize this. And Trump is honestly one of the best inspirations for these people all around the world, saying, hey, you actually can turn your country around. But they don't have the same energy that we have, and that's going to be a trouble.
Todd?
Yeah, there's no shot. There was a cry for help that was Brexit, a one day, or again, where people show up as citizens to vote. But you can't just...
Speaking of Beatles, Ringo Starr was pro-Brexit, as a matter of fact.
Yeah. I remember the actor Michael Caine was as well. He had a great quote about it. But you can't just be a citizen on one day. You've then got to go out and do the thing. And the simple fact of the matter is, here in America, we got taxed too much on tea, and we formed a mob and threw that crap back in the ocean and tarred and feathered some people. To Chris's point, they showed up for one day to vote, but then apparently they're exhausted or drug addicted or whatever, because where is your tea parties? They are apparently nowhere to be found. And
because that infrastructure is not there, so the agency's not there.
And furthermore, your government just taunts you. Somebody showed me a map. There's a map, London. It looks like kind of like a boomerang or a banana. That's like the nice tourist industry where you're allowed to live and have a happy life or go as an American, but everything else is for the immigrants and the drug addicts, and whatever happens there, happens there.
To me, I think the only peaceable means out. I mean, listen, we're complaining about the diminished energy of the church in our era. An organization like TPUSA could not even go on the ground and do in the UK what they're still able to come up with a remnant of people here in the States and do within the churches. They couldn't do that there. Just couldn't do that there. And the issue then becomes, to me, the only peaceable way out to getting their country back is we have to wake up one day, and it's like the day we woke up and there were the mass demonstrations in the streets in Moscow that basically toppled what was left of the Soviet Union. That's how Boris Yeltsin came to power. It was very clear now that the current system could no longer enforce its edicts on the people. It couldn't police the people anymore. And it was either put yourself in exile and get out, or fear the results of staying and facing the mob. I think that's honestly the only peaceable way out. They literally cannot vote themselves out of it. The critical mass, what Chris just said, all their candidates, all their elites, everybody goes to the same schools, everything else. You think there's a uniparty here. I mean, this is what exists everywhere within these godless democratic socialist countries in Western Europe. One of the major reasons why I was against our involvement in Ukraine from the very beginning. We have the clip going around about Putin and Xi talking about harvesting live human organs so people could live 150 years. Understand, everybody in Davos, Brussels, London, and Berlin all thinks the same way. They all agree with that. They all would love to do that. Godless all. And so I don't see a way peaceably out minus mass in the streets like what finally toppled the Soviet Union levels of demonstrations, where it's just clear to the governing class now that there's no amount of force they could bring to bear to police what's left what this mob is, so they just have to eject. Exit question: if the future of the UK were a Led Zeppelin song, great UK band, which Led Zeppelin song would it be? A, When the Levee Breaks, which is kind of what I'm describing. B, Stairway to Heaven. C, Dazed and Confused. D, In My Time of Dying. Todd?
In My Time of Dying.
My Time of Dying.
Aaron?
Short-term Dazed and Confused, but yeah, it's In My Time of Dying.
Well, that brings
I
us
want to bring back Rule Britannia. How about that?
There you go. Let's bring back issue 4 then. If you could do one thing to make sure the U.S. never sinks to where the UK currently is, what would it be and why? Quickly, Todd.
To make sure, we need to go island hopping like in World War II. Trump is apparently going to take Chicago one state at a time.
Yep.
Make Illinois red and keep everything else red, obviously, and keep island hopping.
Aaron?
That was going to be pretty much my exact thing. As much as they rail against the colonizers, they colonize.
Yep.
They over there colonize to a T.
Yep.
They've colonized California. They've colonized every single big city.
Yep.
So it's time to take them back. It's time to take them back because it's difficult. It's more difficult to conquer a big country like this than it is a smaller country geographically like it is in Europe. But they are colonizers, and eventually we will start to look a lot more like the UK than the US if we don't take them back.
Quickly, Chris, go ahead.
Just like you've been saying, perp walks. You need to hold these people accountable. You can't just slither back to your money. You have to be charged for the crimes that were committed over the last 4 years of Democratic rule.
I would add, to me, I think we have to make the red states at least as red as the blue states are blue.
That's not negotiable.
That to me is the first step to all of this. That we have to have, because that's how we'll maintain our agency. If you see in our proportional allocation system, all right, 2 senators per state, districts, each population districting for House. We maintain our agency by making our red states as red as their states are blue. We have to do that. All right, let's get to predictions. Aaron, I'll start with you.
Stupid sports prediction. I'm going Iowa, my Hawkeyes. Nobody's picking them. Have you even paid attention to this series for any amount of time whatsoever? So I've got them, and I think it might even be convincing tomorrow.
Even convincing?
Yeah.
No emotional hedge from Aaron at all. I don't see that very often unless Pat Mahomes is under center.
Always going to be a trenches game, and I just think Iowa's better.
All right. Todd, what's your prediction this week?
As I said earlier, jobs, unemployment numbers, jobs numbers, RFK Jr. doing what he's doing with Pharma, and that meeting Trump just had with Gates, big tech guys of Zuckerberg. There is something in the works that is going to be Trump's version of New Deal, Great Society, Apollo Project, the big thing that America's got to get behind. I don't know what it is, but buckle up, because I think something like that is coming.
Chris?
I guess we're doing a little longer term. I'm waiting for corporate America to start selling me actually healthy food, actually healthy stuff, getting rid of all these things. Because after yesterday's hearing and the last couple of weeks RFK's had going against Trump, even on the vaccine and surviving and actually starting to convince the old man, it's here to stay. And people are waking up, and there's a big market that wants to buy things that don't poison our kids. Wouldn't that be nice?
I am fascinated, actually, by your prediction. I am. So
something's brewing. And Trump,
because the timing of this, and it could just be as simple as Trump trying to soothe them to some degree, occupy them and distract them to some degree, while RFK is, just operating with reckless abandon, some kind of give and take. You have to remember, Trump's worldview is art of the deal. Does he think he can broker some kind of grand compromise where they operate more transparently and above board and higher quality of product in exchange for more domestic investment?
Getting the economy going again. You can like it or hate it. But medicine is a huge part of the economy.
Yes or no? Quick question. We need jobs. Data centers worthy of are those the jobs you want? Data centers everywhere in America? Yes or no?
I don't.
Yes or no? Chris, yes or no? No? I could see that be part of a compromise.
I know, I can too.
Chris, thank you very much. Hour 2 is next.
Thanks for having me.
All right, we're back here with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast with Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre. I'm Steve Deace. Let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox by emailing us, steve@stevedeace.com, DEACE. Like us on Facebook, Me, We, and Gab. Follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, and TikTok. You can also, by the way, subscribe to our new YouTube channel at Deace Show on YouTube, at Deace Show on YouTube. And then don't forget, you can also hit subscribe on your podcast platform of choice. Unless you prefer Apple iTunes, then you hit follow. Either way, thanks to all of you that do that. And if you do that, you'll know for sure that every time we do a new episode, it's for sure in your podcast feed. And then also, you can leave us a 5-star review if you love our show on your podcast platform of preference. Tens of thousands of you guys have done this for us. Thank you so very much. Those are great in terms of helping the show to grow and, frankly, impressing the torturous overlords here. Very capricious and impossible to please overlords here at Blaze TV. That's one of the few things that does please them, though. So thank you for those. All right, we're pleased to tell you about our friends over at Moxie Pest Services. They've been doing this for a quarter century. It's their silver anniversary. How'd they do it? How'd they get this far? Well, because they understand it's the little things that count. And that's why they follow up with their techs each and every day. First of all, to make sure they've got the best cutting edge practices and technologies to keep your home, your property pest free. But then to also, the lost art of customer service, to make sure that they're not the actual pest, that they're not the ones you give them the garage codes, they can get into the house, and then they leave the garage open so anyone could have gotten in the whole rest of the day while you were at work. Or they leave the back gate open so like anybody can just get into your back gate, into your yard all day long while you were at work. Or they don't cover their feet so they track what they're doing for you all over the rest of the house. Those are the things that can make your pest control service the actual pest. That won't happen with our friends at Moxie. And to prove it to you, they're giving you a great offer for your very first service to help them celebrate their silver anniversary. You can get your first pest control service from Moxie for just $25. You can't beat that when you go to moxieservices.com/Steve and use the promo code Steve, MOXIE. MOXIE, moxieservices.com/Steve. Use the promo code Steve for the offer, moxieservices.com/Steve. Promo code Steve. I kind of feel like we dropped a bit of a big bomb at the end of the last hour. I want to just take a couple of minutes to flesh out. Because, again, your prediction has my mind racing. And you have to understand, Trump, his worldview, the core of his worldview, just as demonstrated by his life and how he's governed, is art of the deal. And if you see things the way that he does through the prism of art of the deal, then he is going to constantly be driven by what he thinks is possible, right?
Exactly.
Okay? And so there's a few things that we know. There really isn't a critical mass voting block of people who want to significantly cut down on the amount of money we are spending as a people. It just doesn't exist. There's a large block of it in audiences like this, but a critical mass that would win national elections, it simply does not exist. For example, I'm going to give you 3 numbers. Okay. 0.3, 12, and 43. Right. Got those remembered? 0.3, 12, and 43. Okay. Now I want you to match those numbers with where you think the spending primarily. No, in fact, don't do it with what you think. What you think the average American would say. Mm-hmm. Okay. Where government spending goes. All right. So the three numbers are 0.3, 12, and 43. With me on those? Mm-hmm. All right. Foreign spending to support Israel, choice number 1. Entitlements, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, choice number 2. Military and defense spending, even including secondary costs like veterans benefits, are number 3. All right. So those 3 expenditures. And then the numbers are 0.3%, 12%, 43% in terms of the total amount of money spent by the U.S. federal government in the year 2024. All right. If you ask the average American what we spent the most money on, Israel, military, or Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid, what do you think they'd say?
Military.
Military, I guarantee they'd say that. Guarantee they would. Military is 12%. And that's if you're even broadening it out to veterans benefits and everything else. I mean, every last janitorial cost and everything else. All right. That's every $500 screwdriver and everything else. All right. That's every, sonnet to BlackRock. Okay. And Vanguard. Okay. And
poisoning you with mandatory vaccines.
Yes. All right. That's every email, every love letter, every stamp and postage. That's everything. It's about 12% of last year's spending. 0.3% of U.S. government spending went to Israel in the year 2024. 43% of it is Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. 43%. And I'm going to defend the people here a little bit. I don't do that very often these days. But I kind of can't. I understand that these programs are all underwater. I understand how they work. I do. It's my job to understand things like that. But I also understand why people who have been paying taxes into those programs all their lives don't understand the way that they're actually working. but think that they're just by taking advantage of these programs. Like I get asked all the time, why do you guys call these entitlements? I paid into this. I watched Social Security tax get taken out of my check all my life. I paid into this. I mean, I watched 38, 43, depending on what your, tax rate, what tax rate you're in, be taken out to fund things like Medicare and Medicaid. I worked all my life to pay these things. Now I'm retired and 72 and I need Medicare. Okay. I understand and I'm sympathetic because we all did watch those numbers not show up when we deposited our check, right? From the gross to the net. We all have watched those numbers just disappear our whole lives. And we're like, you mean there's not just a database and I'm just getting back what I paid? I understand how they really work, but I also understand why most people think they don't work that way because they did pay into it in mass amounts. And now we want to go back to those people and say after a generation of working hard and paying into that, we have to cut you to size? I can understand why that's not the easiest political case to make around here. Can I get a witness on that? All right. But that is also, though, frankly, where we are. And so since there's no true constituency to do anything about this, again, see things the way the president does. What is possible? I don't have political critical mass to greatly diminish the amount of money we're pouring out, which means, therefore, I have to use all the capital I have to greatly increase the amount of money that is coming in, right? Mm-hmm. I think the president clearly, maybe at first it was, I can't have Bobby Kennedy getting 2% in a general election, so cut the deal. Maybe that's what it was at first. But I think even on election night, I'm sitting there on the Blaze stage on election night, and if you were waiting for anyone, and if anybody's ego was worth taking a victory lap after taking a bullet to the face and then beating these people, it was Trump. He immediately pivoted to how we're going to govern, mentioned Bobby Kennedy, unsolicited, right? Okay. I think there's clearly some level of buy-in on, or at least intellectual curiosity on what Bobby Kennedy has presented to the president. I think he's bought in on some of it to some degree, and at least is intellectually curious. I don't know if you guys saw this polling this morning, but they haven't polled this in 30 years, like when you and I graduated from high school. In the last 30 years ago, 81% of Americans said they were in favor of a childhood vaccination schedule for their children. That number this week dropped to 51%. Now, you and I've talked since you joined this show. This is kind of a unique political constituency. At least it was at first. But maybe the OGs in you guys as all tribe was a wide cross section of people. Mm-hmm. But where do you think the growth of that percentage is likely come? People voting for Trump or people who voted for Kamala? What do you think the answer to that is? Overwhelmingly, it's the people that voted for Trump.
Yes.
Yeah. So you still have those core granola crunching OGs, okay, that are true hippie left wingers that were aligned with folks like you and Sarah Gonzalez 10 or 15 years ago. They're still there. But the larger growth of that base did not come from Kamala Biden voters. It came from Trump Vance voters.
For the most part, yes.
And I think Trump sees that too.
Yes.
Okay. So looking at some political realities, we're just trying to do some deductive reasoning on your prediction. I don't have a critical mass of people that want less government. Number two, we have to greatly, therefore, increase the amount of revenue that is coming in. Number three, there is a great amount of growth within my own base of the stuff that Robert F. Kennedy is preaching right now and has been for the last 30 years, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Number four, it's quite likely he's the most influential figure in my administration other than me, if you're Donald Trump. That's possible, okay? Mm-hmm. Number five, all right, we just had an absolutely awful jobs report, the kind of jobs report that makes you think a 2008 level crash is next month, okay? I mean, silver and gold silver and gold are going to prices right now that are like something out of the freaking Bible. Okay. I mean, it's just the investment class is like hunker down. Anybody object to anything I've said so far about our political realities?
No.
Yeah.
Guys, in an entire month, we created 22,000 non-farm payroll jobs, meaning jobs that either weren't in the government or involved in agriculture, which is heavily subsidized. So we're talking basically the entire private sector in America created 22,000 jobs net in the month of August.
Also balancing narratives. If you're really going to go into Chicago and start cracking some skulls. And sooner or later, there's going to be some rough stories out of having to do that. It just is what it is. You need to give a competing narrative where there's some candy being passed
Correct.
out.
Because if there's no justification for cutting government, then you have to justify what government is doing, right?
Exactly.
And our version of big government works for you. We're cleaning up the streets. We're putting people in prison.
Yes.
See what I'm saying?
Yes.
Let's roll this. Now let's roll this a little bit more, all right? Who are the largest corporations in the world at this point? Amazon, Google, Meta. Among them, at least, right? They all also have their roots in which country? This one. We need good paying middle class jobs. The idea of the guy that could go work at the aluminum plant or the manufacturing plant or the coal mine or the textile, mill, okay?
Yep.
And right out of high school, that Trump would have been the last generation of Americans that can remember when that was kind of still a norm in America, right? That's a big talking point for J.D. Vance as well.
Right.
He's maybe even more invested in that than even Trump is.
That's why it may be J.D. Vance's idea. Hey, all of our rocket technology, move it from the left coast over back to Alabama, which just happened.
So some of the biggest corporations in the world, and they're from right here. We have a mass need for middle-class jobs. People can, without going into multi-six-figure debt for a, women's studies or English history degree, but make a real living, not be saddled with debt right away, a real livable wage. There's not too many corporations that have the critical mass in America that could supply those kinds of jobs and the critical mass we need. Who among them could? Amazon, Google, Meta. What do they need to build all over the country in order to sustain their current infrastructure? What do they need? Data centers. And I could see the grand bargain here of, well, look the other way on all the censorship you guys did.
It's very Trumpian. It's not out of character.
Cut a deal.
Let's all be groovy together.
You say, let's all be groovy together, as you like to say. You say to Big Pharma, all right, listen, RFK Jr. is out there touting ivermectin. You guys created that, okay? So we're not anti what you guys do, but we're going to have way more transparency, no mandates. We're just going to cut the baby in half and try to please everybody as much as we possibly can to preserve what's left of the traditional, accepted American way of life. And the data center is the new meatpacking plant, and the data center is the new steel mill, and the data center is the new coal mine. Does that make sense? I could, or also back to Big Pharma. You guys are going to bring your production back here to the States. We're going to make your drugs here now.
Oh,
okay.
Absolutely.
And that's also because who are some other companies that could provide those kinds of living wage, middle-class jobs? Merck, Pfizer, they could do it, right? And you guys are going to bring those back here, but we're not going to do any more mandates. We're going to be groovy together. We're going to be partnered together, but no more mandates. You're going to be way more transparent about your data. I'm going to sick Dirty Harry over here, RFK Jr. on you. How do you like them apples? You guys see what he did to the Senate last week? He's going to do that to you. If you guys don't see what I'm saying, that is so Trumpian.
Well, you actually saw Albert Bourla. He's, because of what you're talking about, he actually came out a couple of days ago and said, maybe Trump should get the Nobel Peace. Albert Bourla, because they know.
Yeah.
They played this hand of theirs way too far. Their reach exceeded their grasp. And they're just begging now that they can rearrange these deck chairs on the Titanic.
So the way this ends is the meat packing plant, the steel mill, the textile factory of our grandparents, great-grandparents, basically every generation of Americans from the mid-18th century until the middle of 20th century for 200 years. Those jobs are now replaced with pharmaceutical manufacturing and data centers from American companies who actually have the wherewithal to pay the kind of wage to quote-unquote unskilled workers. Okay, I hate that term. All right. Most of you that are called unskilled have all kinds of skills I couldn't possibly figure out or ascertain what you do. Okay. But that's the term du jour, so we'll go with it. All right. Who can provide quote-unquote unskilled labor a real living wage, sustainable for a family. Which American-based companies could do this? Merck, Pfizer, Amazon, Google, Meta. They could do it. Am I crazy here? Am I riffing off? Am I picking up what you were laying down?
This is all I'm saying, man.
So, Aaron, we're really talking now about this is your generation and the one behind you. All right. These are your families now. This is your quality of life now. All right. Is it so much different working for doing biopharmaceutical manufacturing or data centers than a meatpacking plant, a steel mill, or a coal mine 60, 70 years ago?
I think all of our reflexive answers to no, do you really want data centers jobs? You asked that question at the end of the last segment.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's more of a reflexive no to they're kind of eyesores and they take up a lot of utility headspace in the various areas that they're put in.
But then there's more jobs and there's more utility bill. I mean,
But so did smokestacks.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not advocating for this. I'm just trying to see things the way maybe Trump sees things.
I'm just trying to explain the reflexive no that we had. But at the end of the day, if the trade-off is you actually have a decently paying job out of high school, then I think that's going to be a trade a lot of people take. You know, there's a joke going around that boomers and Gen Z are kind of the same when it comes to technology. And that's kind of mind-blowing that millennials are kind of the only generation that knows how a computer works and knows all the various components. But it's not, I don't think it's that hard of training either. And, you know, I've got buddies who work in data centers and they're supporting their families. They're doing just fine. So I think, you know, again, we're not necessarily advocating that, but I think that is something that is, in what was the rubric you said, possible. Possible. So, you know, I saw something, I'm not sure how accurate this is. It's probably exaggerated a little bit, but it is, I think there's definitely a big grain of truth or a strain of truth here. Basically, if you're a Zoomer man, your choice is absolutely be completely ruthless and climb the corporate ladder and just imbibe as much as you possibly can from an income perspective and then find a mate, or find a mate and just live off the government. It's kind of your choices right now. That's how bad things are in some pockets of the country. Now, that's exaggerated, I'm sure, to some degree, but this would go to alleviate that pressure from the next generation.
And let's face it, that council of rich muckety-muck decision makers sitting up there talking, you know what that looked like?
Did that look like McKinley, Roosevelt, Harding, Coolidge meeting with J.P. Morgan, meeting with Mr. Vanderbilt? I'm asking. I'm trying to be objective about all of this as possible.
But it also looked like the set of The Apprentice, and people loved that.
Yeah,
you're giving us. They thought that show was fair.
Yeah,
and it had good ideas, and so they're going to look at this, and if they honestly, forthrightly put forward what they're trying to accomplish and what it's going to lead to, Trump is going to parlay what people liked about The Apprentice, no matter who the evil villains are. If it's real jobs with real cash, most Americans, for the reasons Aaron just said so, I'm not saying they're bad people or they're good people. They want to have a life and pay the bills and not worry too much.
And that's been true of human beings for a long time.
Yes, it has been. Yeah, it has been. Are the eyesores of data centers the new, wow, that railroad went through town and it's really loud and I can't sleep at night? Are they the new smokestacks from the manufacturing plant? Are they the new soot in the air from the coal mine? You see where I'm getting at here? Okay. Are they the new, wow, the GM plant is a 24-hour thing. Those lights are on all night long. Cars are coming in and out. They're manufacturing 3 shifts, okay, 24 hours a day. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, because I wasn't alive in this period of time where we didn't have shows like this and technology that allowed these kind of conversations to be had. if you grew up in those eras, did you have those laments? And you thought, is this really what it will take to sustain our way of life? Is we have to tolerate this noise from the railroad. We have to tolerate this 24-hour commotion from the GM plant. We have to tolerate the smokestacks here from the manufacturing plant. We have to tolerate the soot in the air from the coal mine. I don't know.
Most of the tolerating in this age is theoretical. Back then, those people like lived under that smokestack. They lived right next to it or things like that. Most people complaining about that things aren't anywhere close to the things they're complaining about.
I agree. But do you see the point I'm getting at here?
Yes.
If these are just... the previous generation complained about those things too, I wonder, but we see them because now in hindsight of the way of life that they preserved for generations, that we see the cost benefit differently than maybe they would have seen it at the time because they were living through some of those
saw it more immediately,
secondary
but
costs.
They still took breathing in that smogs because they went there, and at the end of the day, they had a job that gave them a paycheck.
Exactly.
And you'll do a lot of
You're making my point for me.
Yes.
So then maybe we put up with the eyesores of the data centers because in the end, I've got a job. I'm not deeply in debt. I can own a home. I can pass something on to my kids. I'm just asking. I don't know. I genuinely don't know. Because reflexively, I'd like to say the last thing I want to look at driving through the United States is data center USA, But
well, you haven't even that's data center as we've known it.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're talking AI world data center and whatever that is, which none of us even know.
I mean, one of my radio mentors was the late great Jan Michelson, and he used to talk all the time about his old man worked at the meatpacking plant in the small town of Iowa, Harlan, where he grew up, right? And those jobs ended up all going to illegals during his lifetime. All right, but if you guys live next to a meatpacking plant, I have. They smell terrible. I mean, they smell dreadful.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm passing through Harlan, Iowa, 70 years ago, I'm making sure the windows are up, even if it's 100 degrees outside, because I don't want to smell that, right? Okay. But if I'm living in Harlan, Iowa, and that's putting food on the table, and I'm a law-abiding citizen, and I get to enjoy Americana, that meatpacking plant smells like victory. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So aesthetically, data centers everywhere really rubbed us all the wrong way when we initially had the knee-jerk reaction at the last hour, right? But the question is, the smell of that meatpacking plant, the quality of air from that smokestack and the coal mine, all right? And everything else that, grandpa, your grandpa lived until he was 61 instead of 81 because of the amount of years shaved off the back end of his life for the amount of carcinogens or whatever's down there in those mines in the coal mine that he breathed in for 30 years working for your mom and dad. That kind of stuff. Was the trade-off of those things worth it because of the way of life that came with it? We look back now today, like my son coming to me and saying, Dad, do I have to make $30,000 a year right out of high school to own a nice apartment in Des Moines? And the answer is pretty much, yeah. Okay. And he's like, Pops, what do people in LA, Chicago, and Philadelphia, and Houston, and all these I'm like, they don't. They don't. Why do you think there's so much crime? They don't. All right. You're either rich or you're contemplating what can I get away with, basically. They didn't have to make those choices because they tolerated some of the nuisances that we're talking about. We act like this idyllic life came with no side cost for the previous generations. No, they paid those costs too. Might have been different, might have been better, might have been worse. But there were costs. There were costs to going into that coal mine for 30 years and breathing whatever was down there. There was a cost to those smokestacks in the neighborhood. There was a cost to these things. There was a cost to the sound of the railroad going through town all night long. There was a cost. All right. Now but the cost benefit analysis of what it provided for a way of life, those nuisances were sunk cost and they were willing to pay. We don't see it that way now because we've lost so much ground that we don't see the nuisances that they thought were nuisances that they thought were worthy of tolerating for that way of life that we're trying to get back to today. Does this make sense?
It makes total sense.
So I'm wondering, what nuisances are we going to have to tolerate to get back to that way of life? Because it won't come for nothing. It won't come for nothing. Nothing in a sinful, fallen world does. It's going to cost something. All right? So we all want living wages. There's only so many companies that could actually afford to pay that. We want prices to come down. Well, That's going to take a lot less government spending than we currently have. And there's not a lot of voters for that. You know? And so we're all sitting around here with the Spider-Man gift pointing fingers at each other with our bright ideas of how we're going to make this work until it's like, all right, man, your side, you guys take the hit. What do you mean we, Lone Ranger? Right?
Yeah.
Okay, then. Then we're going to have to absorb some form of nuisance, inconvenience, to have that way of life again. So, and I don't know, I'm asking, are the choices data centers or all your kids become gay race communists in the universities? What's the choice? Well, if that's the choice, I'm going with data centers. Your thoughts? I'm going to take data centers. As a standalone proposition, data centers up for auction. You making a bid? No.
No.
Now, the existential choice is your kids all become gay race communists at the university or data centers. What are you doing then? Probably taking the data centers. Other generations had to make choices like this.
Well, that's
we act like they just tiptoed between the raindrops and just claimed their destiny and it didn't cost them anything. It's not true. They just made the decisions that the way of life they were getting in return was worth the nuisance. They accepted they were in a sinful world. They accepted things could not possibly be utopian or idyllic. So their job was to make the best with what they had.
This is a crucial point because for all of their other wickedness and evils, most other generations in all human history, American or otherwise, did not even have the option of being as comfortable as we are.
Correct.
I have to get on with it. I got to deal with these.
I mean, even look what we're talking about. We're talking about sitting in a cubicle at a data center. The previous generation was like, I guess I'll put the hat with the flashlight on and go 70 feet underground again today.
We make all these compromises and preside all these options. As our world right now is that like, no, that's boring. That's not filling my inner child. See, that's what we're going to find out too.
That's what I was just going to say. I mean, when you put it in the context of the existential nature of the issues that we're talking about, having a data center, you know, they don't make any noise, they don't make any smell. They've got the swamp coolers going. I mean, yes, there are more utilities, but I'm just going here. I just did a Google search: data center jobs, Iowa. Okay.
Yep.
And one of our meme accounts, I think it was Uncontexted, said, guys working in a data center ain't that bad. I did it for 10 years. $81,000 to $162,000 a year. That's for a management position. Technician, low level, $22, $26 an hour. Let's see, technician, $20 to $28 an hour. Cable technician, $18 to $25 an hour. Not getting rich, but in a place like Iowa, that's a living wage.
Yes, it is. You bet it is.
You have to be the person who's willing to understand that as a baseline of existence, not just entertaining yourself endlessly. And I'm not sure we have that even.
This is one of the more fascinating conversations we've had on the show this year to me.
You're welcome.
All right, we'll do a little abbreviated Feedback Friday when we come back. You know, we spend a lot of time and effort thanking you guys for subscribing to Blaze TV, because without you, there would be no such thing. And if you want to join us as well, you're missing out on exclusive content, not just produced by us, but by the entire team here. And Blaze TV is about more in an era right now where huge MAGA influencer accounts were exposed online yesterday for taking money from India to lobby the Trump administration to give in to India's demands and sell America out. I'm talking, if you're in social media, these would probably be several accounts you've heard of and shared and know. I mean, they're accounts I knew and shared.
Were we offered India money?
We have not been offered any Indian money. All right. I have disclosed, I got some of the same Russia Today phone calls other people got. I just never returned any of them. All right. Pretty good rule of thumb is if you claim to be America first, don't take money from any foreign countries. That's my. That's my TED talk.
But what if it's a lot of money?
And then you're like, what's a foreigner? Right, exactly. That money's just as green. It's got George Washington on those Benjamins.
There's just too much money, Steve.
Indeed. So there's just not a lot of there's just not a lot of entities out there, folks, that do what we do. There's just not. And it's funny when I get notes from you guys. Well, what you're saying is different than what host A, B, or C on the network is saying. And I'm like, great. Why in the world do we have to everybody just be one homogenous blob? What is critical thinking about that? You want a homogenous blob? Join their team, right? Where it's danger to democracy broadcasting on every channel and every outlet every day, every year, all the same talking points filtered down. I mean, I think it's great that we're in an era where Trump is saying things like the Epstein thing's become nothing but a Democratic hoax, and you've got serious MAGA people with MAGA street cred like Marjorie Taylor Greene and James O'Keefe are the ones out there driving the narrative that we haven't still uncovered enough data about Jeffrey Epstein yet. You'd never see that on their side. You just never see that. So we are all about that here, and if you want to support us, then you guys help make it possible for us to continue doing that and pushing even more boundaries along those lines. So it's just as low as $8 a month right now. Become a subscriber to Blaze TV. Go to blazetv.com/Deace. That's blazetv.com/Deace, and then use my name, promo code, last name anyway, Deace, to get the discounted subscription, $20 off an annual subscription to blazetv.com/Deace. That's blazetv.com/Deace by using the promo code Deace. Okay, guys, ready for an abbreviated Feedback Friday?
You bet.
Yes.
All right, my bad on, I thought that was a conversation we needed to have. Not to mention, I was genuinely fascinated by how everybody was going to react, because I'm thinking about this stuff myself in real time and anew. So let's start with this from Joe. A question, he says, came up recently in my circle about what to do with estate planning for the future. I've heard stories from both my Protestant and Catholic friends that the older generations gave nearly all their inheritances to local charities and their churches. Just curious in the biblical worldview on what to leave my kids when I do pass to be with the Lord. Well, these are great questions, and we know the answers to lots of these kinds of questions, actually, because the Lord, in his prophetic timeline, established literally his own country. Now, you know what I think? Every government is a theocracy. We're just debating who the theo is and what he, she, or it demands of us. But there are different kinds of theocracies, okay? Now, what Israel was a direct theocracy, meaning it wasn't a government necessarily permitted by God in his permissive will or even specifically established by his active will, but that he was actively ruling and reigning over it on a day-to-day basis in a singular manner unique to relationships that he had as creator and ruler of the cosmos with other nations. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
All right. And so we kind of know what he thought about social institutions, laws. We kind of know what God thinks because he gave us a country. Much of the Old Testament's about that country. And we got an idea of what rules he made and what he did demand of the people when he had a direct theocracy. And so one of the things that was provided for in Old Testament Israel, a couple of devices that I think are key to giving you an idea, Joe, of what God thinks about leaving a legacy for your children, an inheritance for your children. A couple of social conventions. Number one, they had a thing, well, actually they did this every 7 years, and then they did it every 50 years. It was called a year of Jubilee. And part of that was mass, they give the land a rest, all right? So, you'd make sure to keep it, a tighter and better harvest the year before to give the land a rest, so you had 2 years worth of food. All right, so that would help the ecosystem to regenerate, essentially, so they don't strip mine the place, okay? And erode all their soil and everything else that we debate nowadays. The other thing was a mass debt forgiveness. 7 was done because that's kind of a biblical number of completion. It had a symbolic, meaning to it. But 50 was done as kind of a generational marker, so that generations of families would not be saddled with debt. God did not want to create a caste system. Pagans do that in places like India, like we were just talking about. Pagans create caste systems. And so every 50 years, there'd be mass, even peer-to-peer, person-to-person, institution-to-institution debt forgiveness, so that generations would not be automatically born into debt with no hope of getting out of it, except for maybe doing things that God said was morally wrong. So legacy and the ability to set up future generations for success, we see that's one convention God created to show what a priority that was to him. Another one was a thing called the kinsman redeemer. And this would make sure that brothers in the line of in the other brothers in the line of a brother who passed away but left a widow and children, especially, that they would be taken care of, and that they had to actually be brought in as children of your own with an inheritance. So you see the heavy importance that God places on legacy. And in the New Testament, one of the most famous parables Jesus tells is called what? The prodigal son. And what does the prodigal son go and ask of his father? What's he ask him for? His what? His inheritance. Which is another way of saying, Dad, let's go ahead and just start acting now like you're already dead. That's essentially what he was asking. Because that's the only way to get the inheritance is the old man had croaked. So, if you study
the original God is dead before Nietzsche.
Yes. So if you study the Old Testament, you're actually going to get a good idea of what God thinks of these social conventions, and you won't get taken advantage of with toxic empathy, as Ali Stuckey says. Like I when I first got saved, I was just completely soft on the immigration thing. Then I really started studying the Word of God. I'm like, holy cow, man. There's like boundary stones. You have to assimilate. There's no such thing as squatters. You have to change your religion if you want to stay. This is not the immigration policy I expected to be reading in the Bible, but that's what it was. Get to Nehemiah, there's mass deportations, even children. So, God is love, but love is not God. And in God's word, he's going to reveal a lot of these answers. Unfortunately, we just don't have a lot of churches that are really teaching God's word. That's why we don't know the answers to many of these questions. But leaving legacy for your children is very important within God's economy, as he demonstrated by establishing social conventions in his own country by which that could be done. You guys want to add any of that before we move on? You okay with it?
Yep.
Okay. This one is fascinating by Joe Pride, and it goes to some of the things we were just talking about and we talked about with Steve Cortez earlier. I've been pondering what you guys are saying about the debt interest rates in the Fed. The idea is we can't hold these long-term interest rates much longer or something is going to break. But here's the problem that makes that such a tough balancing act. The Feds control overnight interest rates, hyper-immediate interest. But U.S. debt and mortgage debt are not bound to overnight interest. They are bound to long-term interest rates like 10 to 30 years. And those get set by the market. The market trades them to what the market believes inflation will do in the long run. That's because if you're going to lend money to the government or a home buyer, you expect to get a little more back than you lose in inflation. Otherwise, it's not a profitable venture. If you think it's a risk-free government bond, that little more gets traded down to a knife's edge. So long-term interest rates are basically what the market thinks inflation will do in the future. But if we drop Fed interest rates, it's going to pump a bunch of new money into the economy. And guess who gets it first? The people at the front of the trough to decide where it goes and how to convert it into political leverage. And that'll be people like BlackRock. And that'll be a process that will drive more inflation. And the market knows this. So if we drop Fed interest rates and it doesn't look like the market is crashing, investors may actually raise long-term rates because they see more inflation coming. The one condition where long-term rates come down is when the market also thinks long-term inflation will come down. That is only plausible when the economy is about to go through a really bad time. That bad time is most likely to happen when the Fed keeps the thumb screws on until the market crashes and then the money supply contracts from all the failing private debts. I doubt any of this will be good for the midterms. But it might be the only way to come out of the stretch of the last 4 years on the other side since the COVID bailouts, basically. With housing returning to affordability and the government getting a handle on its debts. The Federal Reserve should be abolished. For now, the Fed still seems to operate with the most integrity as the least worst of all of them in the world. As always, the core of this evil is runaway government spending, and the core of that is voters clinging to their sacred cows. Thoughts on Joe's analysis?
About a third of the way through, we need to abolish the Fed. It's not... Imagine being in the year 2025. And you're sitting on X, you're a boomer or Gen Xer, the National Review crowd. Let the markets work, guys. It's the free market here.
Yeah.
It's just...
Where is this free market? Yes.
It's not. This is not a market. It's not.
Well, It sure as hell isn't free. That was an awesome letter. I'm grateful for it because it helps expose in a very detailed way what is ultimately a simple biblical, going back, as Steve said, to the Bible, like a reminder: the markets were made for man, not man for the markets.
Yeah, thank you.
Yet until we grasp that, and here you're just, I'm not saying you haven't thought about it that way, but you're basically just saying that right now we live in a way where man is clearly made for the markets and nobody wants to change that. Along the lines of what we were just talking about, the realities of nobody really wants to cut costs. Everybody really wants government to be Santa Claus. These are ugly truths, but fundamentally, they're no way to live.
If your measure of the economy is in any way up and to the right on the graphs, up and to the right, that means the economy is good. You probably, not maybe all the time, but you probably believe that man is made for the markets fundamentally.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not opposed to up and to the right. But if you can't, if you're Steve's son or anybody's son that's trying to get in the job market for the first time and you can't find a job to where you can just rent your first apartment, I don't care how many charts are showing me up and to the right. There's a problem there.
Let's close with this one from Ryan. I recently moved from Minnesota to South Dakota with my wife and 2 young children for mainly political reasons, or so I thought. After finding a great church that knows what time it is and getting baptized last summer, and living here for 2 years, I now know that I was brought here for a wake-up call. So we're moving back to Minnesota. I feel more convicted now to get in the fight more than ever, and I'm starting with the governor's race and plan on helping to get a new governor elected. I realize this is going to be a great undertaking. Any tips or advice would be much appreciated.
Where did he say he moved to?
He moved from Minnesota to South Dakota.
South Dakota.
And then after getting into a church that told him what time it was, he's like, you know what, I got to go back and save Minnesota. So he's going back.
You're going back as a missionary. I don't really have a problem with that.
No, I don't either. No.
I didn't want to.
No, I don't either.
Gosh, I don't want to crush. I'm just like, I hope you are very, very realistic.
Here's the tip I'm going to give you. Y'all need to find a likable, inspirational candidate, or you can't win. You need to find a likable, inspirational candidate. Someone that can message that change is truly possible. Well, Steve, there's not a lot of those people. I know. I don't know if you guys have noticed, only one person can be governor of Minnesota at a time. That would seem to indicate it's not a job for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So therefore, all right, who is a likable candidate that can inspire people? That something different or better than what's currently happening is achievable and possible. And and gives them permission to believe in it. That's what you need. Somebody likable that can inspire the people at the same time.
All I'm saying is I just went through an exercise with my youngest daughter, sophomore in high school, who's showing D1 running talent. And we looked at the top 25 colleges right now in the rankings for women's cross country. And I just said, Elise, let's go down. And if you were given a full ride right now by these colleges, how many would your mom and I let you go to? Out of 25, there was maybe 7 we would let her go to. And I'm just telling you, brother.
Because you don't want to raise a gay race communist.
There's no way I would let my daughters go to college in the state of Minnesota right now. So that's why I'm just like, I hope you have a plan.
You're like thoughts and prayers?
Yeah. That place is a hellscape.
Now, here's the thing, though. The Minnesota Republican Party is probably not going to want to give you the very kind of candidate I just mentioned.
Right.
And they're going to be convinced. This is one of the reasons why you guys have been losers for so long. They're going to be convinced someone that can talk jobs in the economy, make the trains run on time, technocrat, right? Avoids all these culture war issues because look how left-wing the voters here are, blah, 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 blah. I can promise you, you'll be moving back to South Dakota. You'll be sending me a note. Next thing, not Thanksgiving of 25, Thanksgiving 26. Steve, I gave it my best shot. We're going to go ahead and head back to South Dakota. You'll be sending me that note if that's what y'all do. you're going to get annihilated. Who can inspire people. You need an outlier. You need again, people don't vote on, they're not voting for issues. In their minds, they're voting for candidates.
You need Jesse the Body Ventura, but not totally insane.
Who it gives, you're trying to disrupt the system.
Yes.
So you need a candidate that gives people permission to think the system could be disrupted, not run better. It doesn't need to be run better. Right? You literally have a satanic cult in charge of your state. It doesn't need to be run better. Things need to be driven out. Now, I'm not suggesting running for office using that language, but someone who understands what time it is and can message those kinds of things in the affirmative. One of the reasons why it's tough for guys in my line of work to eventually run for office themselves is because we've had to say things as bluntly as I just did to you, and that can be used against us later on, right?
That's why we not only can't be governor, but probably any other job.
And that's why sometimes you need someone who knows people like what I'm saying is true, but has never actually said it before, but can go out there and message those things as if they know it is true, but in more affirmatively inspirational ways. Fair?
Yes.
Okay. Everybody, have a great weekend. We'll see you again on Monday. Until then, Romans 8:28.